Welcome to Truth, Money, and Freedom. Today is Sunday, April 28th, 2019. I'm going to bring this story to your attention here real quick. JP Morgan, we are fast approaching a point where banks run out of liquidity. Now, I'm not going to read this because if I read it, a lot of it requires translation. It's kind of technical. But basically, what's happening is with the interest rates that have gone up, and banks that are trying desperately to hold on to cash. We're running into an inflection point right now where uh, banks aren't going to loan because they want to hold on to a certain amount of money. And this is kind of what we ran into in 2008. Now, I'm not trying to scare anyone here because I don't know exactly how they're going to deal with it at first. I know how they're going to deal with it in the end. Um, But J.P. Morgan says this, and I don't know if I trust J.P. Morgan when they put out press releases anyway. Um, but this is going to affect the stock market. That's basically what I wanted to come on today and say. Whenever these inflection points are hit, the stock market, basically reacts to it. And I don't know exactly who owns what in the stock market. This is because everything's distorted now. And we're going to be doing a video sometime, hopefully tonight, if we can get everyone's time linked up. We're going to talk about the wealth transfer, but we're also going to talk about what's going on in the stock market, why it reacts the way it is, and possibly, who owns, the majority of what's going on, basically in the stock market. Because according to Lynette Zhang at ITM Trading, the insiders are pretty much out, and they're holding on to cash. So how did that stock market go up literally in 3 months to its old highs? And Lynette Zhang says very simply, the banks borrowed money. I'm sorry, the businesses borrowed money from the banks to buy back their own stocks. That makes basically everything kind of complicated to read. Basically for charting and for trying to figure out where the inflection points are on every type of technical analysis. However, we do have a member, Chaos Craig, who's very good at charting and is very good at technical analysis. And he'll be taking a closer look at that with us, hopefully, if he can join us tonight. So, expect some a little bit of turbulence in the markets this coming up week because I think that something is going on right now that I don't even truly fully understand. But it is the same problem that we had, like I said, in 2008. The banks running out of liquidity. In other words, out of the ability or the willingness to extend credit to their customers. And then basically they start hoarding and reserving cash so they can pay for their day-to-day operations. We can, like I said, I could read this whole article to you, but it's very technical. It shouldn't be, but it is. But that's basically what it comes down to. And I remember that in 2008 very well. That's exactly what was going on. Banks didn't want to um, loan money to Lehman Brothers. Lehman Brothers was somehow singled out of the fray, even though Lehman Brothers was healthier than Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan. It was technically much healthier than those two banks, but it seemed like it was kind of a sacrificial lamb, that it was singled out, starved of all of its liquidity by the banks stopped lending to, in other words, the other big banks like J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. They all do a lot of interbank trading, and they stopped trading with Lehman, and so Lehman was literally starved to death, choked to death, and so I don't know if something like that is going to happen again, but the symptoms are very similar. So that I'm seeing right now, basically, and J.P. Morgan is saying, something very similar here. But once again, I'm reluctant to actually say that I believe anything they say at J.P. Morgan. I will report on what they say, but it doesn't mean I believe it. So, but at any rate, just to let you know that there's some kind of inflection point coming in the markets. And we will probably discuss that tonight. Once again, I'm hoping we can get the gang together. That is difficult to line up all of our time to actually get together and do this, but we're going to give it a really good shot. Hopefully tonight we'll have Conjecture and Chaos Craig, possibly 4 ounces. I will try my best, gang, to get everyone assembled for a really good critical thinking podcast, so you guys can see how we, try and figure these things out, and basically try and foresee what's going to happen in the markets. But at any rate, that's why I was bringing the story to your attention. I don't know exactly what all of this means. I just know the symptoms are the same. So what this means is the Federal Reserve is going to have to react to this. But how will they react? And there's 2 things they can do. They can lower interest rates, or they can print more money. And QE4 is on the horizon. I promise you guys, it is coming. Quantitative easing 4, where they print a bunch of money and literally start flooding it into the system, which is what's causing all of our distortions in the first place. But they also have to lower interest rates. In fact, I think that's actually more critical at this point than bringing up interest rates didn't work. There's too much liquidity within the system right now. You can't keep raising interest rates and expect everyone to be able to pay the interest without more liquidity in the system. So once again, those 2 solutions that the Fed does are interlocked. You can't really separate them. If you're going to, basically raise interest rates, you've got to put more money in the system, because this is the new system we have now. This is the new norm. Enormous amounts of money sloshing around. A lot of it, like I said, a lot of it's been borrowed by businesses to buy back their own stocks. And I'm sure they're using their stocks as collateral. So these banks are going to end up owning, these businesses, and once again, just by the virtue of using that as collateral. So remember now, I told you at the end of the Keynesian economic cycle, the banks own everything. See, this is part of how they do it. However, people don't see it that way because it's in the background, it's distant, and it makes very little noise. So people don't see in the background that big banks are loaning money to big corporations to buy back their own stocks. And there's multiple reasons they're doing this. The businesses are doing this, buying back their own stocks, to make them look more attractive. But once again, the PE ratios are now completely distorted. So coming back to something that we call normal is almost impossible at this point as they do that. These companies are not making enough money, to justify their PE ratios. They just aren't. The corporations are not as healthy as they once were, and for many different reasons, by the way. We could go into that into another podcast at some point in time. Okay, but that's kind of what I wanted to bring to your attention, and I will try to assemble the gang tonight so we can get something really exciting that I'm sure you guys would love listening to. And well, thank you for taking a few minutes with us again at Truth, Money, and Freedom, and have a wonderful Sunday. God bless all of you.